Welcome to a Tuesday night stream. We're not, we're doing something a little bit different tonight. We're going to be messing around with the OP-1 field. This is an incredibly controversial device and one that I'm happy that I'm going to be able to use for a little while. This thing is incredible. It's the first time I've used the OP-1. I've seen it and I've heard and read and looked at it a bunch, and I finally got one in the mail today, and there were so many things I wanted to try with it, and so far it hasn't disappointed. And on top of that, there are a bazillion ways that this is such the perfect instrument to be worked or to be used with Logic. And so that's kind of what I'm going to focus on tonight. I'm not really going to go through the OP-1 field that much. It is on this live camera feed over here, so you can see every time I'm using it. And so it's just going to sit here for the most part. So I'm going to walk you through the setup that I've got going with it right this moment, and talk about some of those features which I think really just flourish when paired with Logic. So first and foremost, USB-C cable to my computer, and it works as a MIDI and audio interface. That was one of the things that I was really most interested in, because I wanted to be able to connect this into the system directly without having to use anything analog per se. Let's open up the audio MIDI setup. You'll see right here, it hooks up MIDI. And then on the other part of this, let me see, there it is. It's also an audio device, 2 in, 2 out. So you can actually send audio to it, etc. I haven't gotten too much into sending things to it, but so far I've definitely used it as an input. Now, right off the bat, one of the best things about Logic that is not the same for every piece of software is the fact that we can go to our audio drivers and set up a different input device than we have for our output device. So in this case, I'm using a special one for streaming, so you could all hear it, but I'm using the input device as the OP-1. We could also, if we wanted to, I'm not going to do it right this moment, but we could create an aggregate device and make the OP-1 part of that. So I could actually pair that with my SSL12 or my Focusrite or Steinberg, whatever. I can make it part of the greater system of audio interfaces. Now, you end up with some latency style issues and other things going on with that, so it's not perfect. But certainly it's an option, and a really good option in some ways. For tonight, we're just using it as the input device by itself, and then we're going to output to the streaming setup, so you could all hear what's happening with it. Okay, so that was the first piece of the puzzle, is using that as an interface. Now, on this first track, and let's label stuff, right? OP-1. I'm using an external instrument. The MIDI destination is the OP-1, and the input would be 1 and 2, which is, again, the OP-1, just the audio from the USB-C connection. Pretty simple, nothing too complicated. We're going to close that. We're not using that right now. Now, when I play my keys, right? So that's the OP-1 you're hearing. I see signal, so I think you should be hearing on the stream as well. That means I can also instantly use any of my MIDI effects with it. And I've been wanting to try this. I haven't tested out the latency too much. I have to have a little higher latency when I'm doing streams. I've got a new setup I'm going to be experimenting with. Just haven't gotten there yet this week. But let's just put like a drummer track here on the first 4 bars. And let's see how the sync seems, right? mean, it feels okay. It feels like I'm at a little higher latency just from the stream settings, but it doesn't feel wildly out of control. You can see my numbers here are actually really horrible. But that's not because of the OP-1. That's because of the live stream. I think once I test this without the live stream, that will be right on target. But even this is relatively playable. Let me turn off the ARP for a second. I mean, I can definitely hear it, but it's not bad overall. And let's switch this over to the percussion mode for a second. Where are those notes? There they are. Yeah, I think once we have this without the streaming setup, I think it'd be perfectly doable. Okay, so as a connection, it seems right on target. I think it's going to be great in terms of playing it. Now, of course, there are so many quirks about this device that we're not even going to get into tonight, but it's such an incredible device in terms of the interface, the graphic interface, the tweakability of sounds. It has a ton of limitations, like, you know, one effect per sound, and they have the 4 different tape machines, so you have 4 different projects, each with 4 tracks. And so right off the bat, the tweakability of it, the, you know, being able to take this on the road or wherever you are is one part. But then if you come up with sounds and things that you really like, how does that work with Logic? Well, I mean, it's no different than anything. If you have an input from it, we can create a new audio track, and we'll call this OP-1 audio, right? I can push the record button. I don't have to input monitor because I already have that on a different track. And then we can just do, oh, let's mute the drums. Do, 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 do. Let's see, I just want to delete that. Okay, cool. So we're going to go back up to this one, like that. So now we can record audio from it and have many tracks, as many tracks as we like. And some of the other features that we have with this which are pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how I could probably get in trouble for doing this. Okay, so that let's hope that was short enough that that's not going to mess up the stream. But you can play the radio straight from this and manipulate the radio and do all kinds of stuff with it. And one thing I just learned by doing that is that it's not going out the USB-C, it just goes out the speaker. But I think if you record it, once it's recorded, then it could go into Logic as well. So you could actually take some of those manipulations of the, you know, over-the-air FM radio and do stuff with it. So that's kind of cool. But the thing I want to talk about the most in this stream tonight is something that the moment I realized it had USB-C for digital audio back and forth, and it had MIDI, was taking some of the sounds that we create there and actually making them more usable in Logic using something like the auto sampler. So I've got this sound. I don't have a sound. Let me play it. Right? That's just like one of the default patches on here. Let me see which one it is so I can tell you exactly. Oh, I don't know which one it is. Oh, I think I remember it being digital. Oh, let's do it over here. Digital. Or, I don't remember. we'll have to figure that out. Oh, I know what it's called because I named it. It's Afterglow. So we have that as Afterglow. Let me figure out which one that's on. Oh, under Dimension. So that was that one. Just one of the presets, which you could tweak and change all you want. But I went in and on this track put the auto sampler. Now, if you haven't used the auto sampler, something you should check out if you use any kind of external instruments or even instruments inside Logic that you want to make into a more concrete instrument, say it's through a bunch of effects or different processing. So I set this up so that it had the full range of the keyboard. I did it so that we are sampling every 6 semitones. You can see the lighter blue keys on here. These blue keys are the notes that are going to be recorded. And I did change the velocity layers. I'm doing 3 velocity layers, but I'm using the logarithmic, and that was a mistake. I think it should just be linear or even exponential. I don't know. I did the log one, and I'm not as happy with it. I think you have to push a little harder than the original instrument, so probably linear would be the real way to do it. And then I did auto loop search with crossfade, which just means it's going to analyze each of the notes that you get recorded. It's going to do an automatic loop, and then it sets the percentages. And then I click sample. It took about 14 minutes to sample that one preset, the Afterglow preset. And now, once you've done that, it saves it inside the Logic file structure under auto sampled. You can see OP-1 field Afterglow. And here's all of the different notes for it down here at the bottom. Let's turn off some of these other things at the top. We don't need all of these open right now. And zones. So each of these are the notes that got recorded. So I'm going to switch over for a second. I got a little bit of a crackle. I think that's just from the stream. Let me reset my... I don't want to go to 512. So that's exactly what it was sounding like a little bit ago, except this time it's the sampled version of it. Right, so we have the original, which I think we were hearing both. We were, because I had both record armed. Here's the original. It's a little, let's just turn up the volume a hair. Okay, cool. Essentially, I've done a lot of testing. Aside from the velocity layers just triggering at slightly different places, so it feels different when I play it just because of the loudness, which is easily changed next time I sample one. The two things are very similar. And so you can go through and create any of these things. The big difference, of course, is once you do the auto-sampled version, you can no longer tweak it on the OP-1 itself. But, I mean, we're in Logic, right? So you don't necessarily need to have all of the original stuff. It just happens at a different place. So, for instance, we can go through and add a filter just on the sampler itself. Of course, we have all of the other effects that we would have with anything. So I can come do like a step effects. And so a lot of tweaking can happen after the fact instead of before. We can also, which is nice, come down and actually say, you know what, I want that step effects on the original. Let's put it over here. So this is the live OP-1 coming through this. Right, so all of Logic effects and the OP-1 effects really creates this really cool thing. But every time, so one of the things that I've heard so much about the OP-1 is how limited it is with tracks, solved with Logic, obviously, and that you don't have the ability to put on all the multiple effects and things on it, which is partially solved by using Logic because we can just add all of the other effects we want to inside Logic itself. But anytime we're using this, and we come through and we find like a preset that we like, right? It can be anything. Let's do lullaby. Engage that. And let's turn off the step effects for a second so we can just hear this. I think so. It's coming through Logic and through the headphones right now. But let's go to the effects for a second. And I'm going to change some of the effects. Ooh, such cool sounds from that. I can't even see the screen with the lights, but let's pick something else in here. Let's see. We're going to go to McDoom. I'm going to change the effect. So we have a whole new instrument. Sounds pretty cool. Let's turn back on the auto sampler for a second. And maybe we'll just do one velocity layer for a second so you can see what this looks like. And I'm going to do one every octave. Yeah, like that, every C. Do, 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 do. Let's turn this on. I'm going to hit sample. And this one, because it's not Afterglow anymore, I think it was Make Doom, right? Hit start. We'll see how this works. And I'm going to turn off the Logic feed so you don't all hear it. You don't need to listen as it happens. You might hear a little bleed from my headphones, but it's just going to record one note at a time all the way up. And then we'll have a playable version of this sound that I can use for other things. It says 1 minute remaining. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, at the very least, get your hands on an OP-1 at some point, create a bunch of sounds, and you'd be able to have those in Logic or share them wherever. I mean, this is a pretty cool way to take an instrument which has some really intentional features, but expand that set out by using various tools that we have access to. This is there's comments coming in now. Uh, it's crazy expensive. It's like the most expensive small instrument like that. Obviously, I've got some other instruments which cost $2,000. My ARP 2600 is worth more than that. And I've got a few others other devices which are that much money. I don't think that this is too expensive for what it does, because it does so much. I think the 256 megabytes of internal memory, is that the same for the newest one? I can't remember for the Field exactly what that is. I thought it was more in terms of that, but I'd have to look. So, I mean, I've used on campus, or I used to have one of the big PreSonus mic pre's, the fancy ones. I've used a microphone preamp, which all it does is change the level from a small level to a larger level, so you can put it into your mixing board. I've used one of those that costs as much as this, and it doesn't do nearly what this thing does. So it's all about matter of perspective. I think Behringer, for instance, has changed the game with synthesis and making devices that are really affordable. And I've got a lot of those too. It's a tenth of the price. I just bumped it, but to use this thing, right? The Model D. This is a great instrument. I've got like 3 or 4 of the Behringer ones that I use. And those were much cheaper in many ways, but they still don't do anything like what the OP-1 does at all. And so I think that you got to be careful comparing apples and oranges a little bit. Let me hear what that sampled version sounds like. So this is the McDoom. And again, I think it's because the sample rate is off. I need to figure out to change the sample rate on the OP-1 more reliably. I don't know if I can change it right this moment in the middle of a stream. So I just have to every once in a while just tell it to re-sort itself out. Right, so that's the sample version. Here's the original. So they sound close enough for most things. You can always record the audio directly into an audio track, but at the same time, sometimes we want to be able to change the part later and do other things. So auto sampling. Let me see this one again. Yeah, that sounds realistically very close. Okay, so the last thing then I'll mention, just between these two systems, would be in your project settings under synchronization, and under MIDI, you can send out clock information. Of course, the OP-1 can receive MIDI clock information. So I've got that set up with clock. I don't have anything else set up. I don't think I need to right this moment. But let me turn on my metronome. So that difference in my metronome and Logic and the OP-1's metronome is because of the streaming setup. Once I turn all that off and just go back to the straight drivers, that'll be almost indiscernible between the two. So I push play on my Logic, and the OP-1 starts engaging its transport as well. So I can actually use the two of these things together, meaning if I have like a song I'm working on the 4-track tape deck inside the OP-1, and I just want it to play in sync with what I'm doing in Logic, then we line it up, we push play, and I haven't tested out drift and all the other stuff, but theoretically it should just play with the MIDI time from Logic and stay exactly in sync. Not exactly, but whatever that offset is going to be, just due to the system restrictions, it's going to stay locked in that way. But this thing, let me switch over to the real one. I mean, knobs. I like knobs. And it's not just about knobs, because you can add knobs to Logic and do all kinds of stuff, but it's like a thought out system of knobs that allow you to tweak the most musical or thought out parameters right off the bat. And so you end up with things like that. Now, one thing I haven't done yet, I'm going to do it right now, though. I'm going to try it. When you hit the Shift Communications page and you go to the MIDI one, let's see, notes. So clock in. Okay, so notes go both ways already, and other stuff goes both ways. Okay, cool. So let's get out of there. So I want to see, maybe down the road here a little bit. Let's just go down to an empty track. So we're hearing that. I don't know about sending MIDI from this thing over. So that's one thing I'm going to need to figure out a little bit, but let's just pull some instrument. Okay, so it's automatically working, which is nice. I want to know if I record this. If those knobs, they don't look like they send anything. That's what I was curious about. If those knobs sent any data, and they do not appear to. I'll have to look up and see if that's possible. Because that would be way cooler if these knobs could actually send some sort of control data so I could recreate performances later. Like this. Oh, I guess I'm on the wrong track. That's cool. Okay. So we end up with two different systems that we're tweaking simultaneously. Whatever we do in Logic and whatever we do out on the OP-1 field. I think that there's a lot of room for collaboration between the devices. There's a lot of room for creativity coming out of the OP-1 and then, continuing that creativity inside Logic. There's a lot of room for using the OP-1 standalone as an idea creation tool and then bringing those sounds into Logic itself. So I think that it's like a win-win. In many ways, the cost of OP-1 field is so much more than Logic itself, like the actual just Logic Pro. Except you have to factor in a Mac computer because the Mac computer is kind of like, the security key for making sure you're using Logic in the right way. That's one of the reasons why, of course, I don't think Logic will ever move to something like Windows. It's because Apple is giving us Logic one-time fee. It's like I bought it once. Well, I bought it 3 times, but the first time I bought it, it was pretty much the same price as this OP-1. I mean, it was like $1,500 or something. It was really expensive for Logic Pro Studio. Was it $1,000? $1,500? I can't remember. It was expensive. And then the price dropped to like $500, and now it's under $300. And when they switched it to Logic 10, we didn't have any update costs ever. And we haven't had any Logic update costs for a long time. And so that's the entry fee, right? Is to pay for Logic the first time. And so far, the price to upgrade Logic isn't the price to upgrade Logic at all. It's the price to pay for a new computer. And so that's the real price of the Logic software. It's not the one-time fee you pay. That's just the gate. And then the rest of this is getting a new computer every couple years. Because all of a sudden they say, ooh, Dolby Atmos, which I'd love to know. We have a few people watching right now. I'd love to know which of you are using Dolby Atmos in Logic. Like, how many of you are spatial audioing mixes in Logic? I mean, seriously, put in the comments. I'd love to know. I've done a couple things with it. I understand the entire workflow and how to use it and best practices with mixing. I just don't find myself wanting to do it that often. I much prefer to do stereo mixes. I'll even do headphone mixes that use binaural techniques that are so cool and like wrap around your head and have like little nuanced things like put, guitar in one place in the pan and the audio field and then put a little bit of the reverb or delay off that guitar in the rear of your binaural field and then move it around a little bit so you can hear it. That's like cool. You don't need spatial audio for that. But I think there's a lot. Q says, I'm not. I wish I was doing Dolby mixes. That would be a dream. And you could. I mean, if you have Logic, it's all there. You can even do it with one of their cheapest pair of, AirPod headphones. You don't even need the Maxes. And then you can do their head tracking and move it around. But you need one of the Silicon Max that's updated. And so if any of those things are restrictions in your own life, then Apple's like, ooh, just give us money. We'll get you the right computer. We're happy to mail you a computer for the right price. And so that's unfortunately the system with Apple isn't so much that they wanted to make Logic expensive. They wanted to make Logic attractive so that you'd have to buy a computer to use it, which is the opposite model than some other workstations out there right now. Palo Alto says, I agree. A stereo mix is perfect. I wear headphones to listen to music on my walks, and every time I turn my head with Atmos mixes, the mix changes. Super. I've actually turned off the spatial audio as a default for my headphones because a few reasons. They had to create a system that would work with people who are doing everyday things like going on walks, right? Going on walks. And so it's like you move your head from the position. It's like you leave your position, your head in a place for a little while, and the mix normalizes to that position. You move your head, you hear it a little bit. Say you go in a different direction. The mix doesn't always stay facing the other way. After it realizes you're consistently going in a certain place, the mix normalizes to the new direction. So you can never, for more than a brief period of time, actually leave your head facing in one direction. Because if you leave it there for too long, the mix recenters on that new direction. That's a completely different experience than if you have like a Dolby Atmos speaker setup, speaker array. So if you're in a studio, those speakers always stay in those places. They don't move around. But the head tracking with the headphones, there should be, in my opinion, a button like they have with the Waves NX system where it's like you're facing a direction, you say this is, reset to this position, and then it doesn't move until you reset it to a different direction. And so I think that's it's like those are the kind of things that Apple's like, ooh, we're giving too much control to the end user. We're giving them too much power to like make decisions for themselves. And so, they don't. Yuri Nader says, is the OP-1 for beginners? I don't think so. There's kind of. So it's very tweakable. But there's certain things on it that are for people who understand the history of audio production, right? So it has the 4 tape machines. And you have to remember all of these, like, once you get into the system, I've had it just for a few hours, but the shift key is like the key to everything. But it's like, it has the Studio 4-track tape machine. I know you can't see this, and you can't even get close to seeing it. Maybe you can now. Here, let me raise up this camera just a little bit, so I'm not holding it in a weird place. So you probably can't see it on there, but there's 4 different tape machines. It has the Studio 4-track, the Vintage 4-track, the Porta 4-track, which is the cassette one, and then the Disc Mini, which is mini disc. And those are your 4 ones, and they each have different sounds to them that are mimicking the original hardware that were those type. And so if all of a sudden you're using this and you're like, what's a mini disc? Or what's the difference between a 4-track versus a vintage versus a cassette, a 4-track cassette recorder? All of those things which I've used in my career. But I mean, they do sound different. It's like the mini disc one has a little bit of that, like, beautiful MP3 chirpy stuff. Why would I want that? That I don't fully understand. But it's like those kind of throwbacks are a great history lesson for somebody who's using this. But even just like the thought process of digging into this and recording to a tape in the first place, I don't think it yells beginner to me. I think it yells medium to an advanced type situation, because there's so many things you can do with this that if you don't understand the process of how you might have done it in a different way, it's going to be like a little bit confusing. But with any device, I think that this lends itself to like button pushing and tweaking. And so somebody who doesn't understand all of that stuff is going to learn it as they use it. So it wouldn't be necessarily a beginner device, but it would be an intermediate device that a beginner could use and then grow into. And as soon as you're an intermediate user on this, you can be an advanced user on this. And there's still more things to learn about it. I mean, it's like this whole ecosystem of features. That's the beauty of these things, is that they're so deep. There's so much depth in this thing that it's like insane. Let's go back to that. I mean, I want to use this thing for sound design. There are so many cool things. It's easily up there on the same level as sculpture for me in Logic. I mean, there's just so much to this that I want to like just get into and experiment with. Play all the presets to see what they envision and then make some of my own. And of course we have a, sequencer stuff built in. So there's all of the features that I haven't even like gotten into, but that I'm excited to see how they can interplay with Logic and go back and forth. Any other questions? I mean, this stream is not really designed to go too much past a few more minutes. It's really just an introduction to how this thing can be used with Logic a little bit, which I think is clearly the case that if nothing else, Logic is designed to work with a device like this. It just is. It's so good with this. Between the auto sampling and the quick sampler and all of the MIDI effects and the fact that we're tied in with OS 10, which does, these amazing aggregate audio devices so I can pair this with my other device and make it into one large device. I mean, this is like the beauty of the whole thing. So I think that there's going to be a lot of hours just like tweaking and messing and using this thing in unexpected ways. Any other questions? There's a few people watching right now. Thanks for being here on a late night. I am going to probably do another stream or at least another video about this in the next couple of days and release it in a daytime instead of nighttime. But I don't know. We draw a different crowd in the evening time, so sometimes you're among the group that can't make the other times. So, and as a reminder for anyone who's watching this now or later, we do have our new membership program for the channel, which does member-only bonus streams once a week, and they'll be getting sampled instruments every month as well. And I think the first few that we're going to be doing are from the OP-1. So if you're a member, you'll be able to get some of these ones that I'm auto sampling and just posting. So you'll have the ability to get some of the OP-1 without having to pay for the OP-1. I shouldn't say it quite like that because you're not getting the instruments. I mean, the tweakability features of the OP-1 field are nothing like just a sampled version of it. But it's still kind of fun. It's fun to be able to have a taste of that sound and hear it in a usable way. And Palo Alto says, dig the live streams, wish I had a schedule. And it's me too. The only streams I schedule in advance right now are the member bonus streams so that they can know when they are. But otherwise, I haven't really been streaming much the last 2 weeks. I did a big trip to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I was doing some impulse responses in a couple of the churches there. And so I took a little bit of time away from streaming and making videos, but it feels like we're back right on target with that now. I'm going to be doing a ton. So hang tight. Eventually, at some point, we'll do some scheduled stuff, but For now, I usually give about 15 minutes warning. And so actually tonight was a little longer. I think I set it up about 2 hours ago. So if you are subscribed and have the notification bell selected, then you should be getting those warnings about a live stream coming up. So make sure you're at least in that situation to give yourself a shot. But you're here, so you know, I mean, you must have gotten notified somehow. Any other questions about the OP-1 field at all? Like I said, we're going to be talking more about it and making this device a more integrated part of the channel, because I love the people over at this company. They are some of the nicest people I've ever interacted with, and it just oozes something that speaks to me, and so I'm gonna see where it takes, because I really want to figure out just how this device fits into the modern workflow, not just in like Logic, but in recording studios. And we do this thing on our campus at the university where we have a synthesizer club, and so we're going to be using it with all of our synthesizer club students and building it out. So, more to come with that. I think, in spite of it being what some people think of as expensive, because for me it's expensive, I just feel like it's packed with stuff that is so nerdy cool. It's like, wow, it's pretty intense. If there's no other questions, and I'll hang out for one more minute and see if there are anything. Thanks, Palo Alto, Yuri, Q, Coletti, Mr. Polkvist. I know I just mispronounced every single one of your names, or your handles, I should say. But thanks for all being here. This is like the best part of being a YouTuber for me, is not making videos by myself and just posting them up, but doing the live streams where I get to actually talk and interact. That's the teacher side of me. It's like my favorite part of being a university professor is being in a classroom with students. It's like actually talking and interacting and going places I didn't know we were going to be going, unexpected twists and turns. So I think that's the cool part of this whole thing. And so if you're just joining, or if you're leaving and you missed the beginning, definitely go back and check it out, where I show some of the connection points for the OP-1 field. I got a box full of goodies today. And so I've got a couple of the other instruments that are like the siblings to this one. Some of them, the more affordable options, but we're going to be messing with all of them and trying them out and doing videos about it. So come back more often. And like I said, if you're interested in the bonus streams that we're doing weekly, I think our next one is probably going to be on Thursday. We put a poll up for all of our members, and they weigh into what the best time is for them, and whichever one has the most votes, we do it at that time. And then it's just like 4 or 5 people getting to ask whatever questions they want, and we get to explore whatever they want. And then they get other free content too. They get other content, which this month is going to be OP-1 field samples. So sweet. Pretty cool. Okay, that's it. Hope you're having a good day, good night, and check back for more streams. We'll be doing some more.